Gentleman's yielded back. I now recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Casten, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to all our witnesses. Ms. Howe, I've been sitting here reading your resume and thinking that in another life you and I might have run across each other. Before coming to Congress, I raised a lot of capital in for privately held companies. When you were, just want to understand a little bit about your background at Merrill Lynch's private banking practice. Was that primarily for, I assume that's like wealthy families and family offices who were your clients? Is that right?
Yes, my investors were families of wealth.
Oh, okay. And was there like a minimum size that you were targeting or a typical size? Like just help us understand who your clients were typically.
Back then, my minimum size was $10 million and up.
Okay. And were they investing primarily equity, or were you advising them across the whole capital structure, debt and mezz instruments and everything else?
The entire capital structure, including their philanthropy and multi-generationally.
Okay. And if they were investing in debt or mezz, were you guys like actually negotiating debt deals, or was this, where you'd be negotiating covenants, or were you primarily backing into other like previously syndicated deals?
No, Merrill Lynch was pretty much a distribution of other people's investment ideas. So,
Okay. And did you make many direct investments outside of the public? I mean, were you doing real estate? Would you ever advise them to make a direct investment in a new business like we're talking about here today?
Made none on behalf of our clients, but I made personal angel investments.
Okay. And I'm thinking this from the perspective of a family that's got minimum 10 million wealth. I'm assuming they have some direct investments, whether through funds of funds or, they've got a buddy they went to college with who's, the things you do as a private wealth manager. Would you help with the diligence on those investments for them?
Did I help with diligence?
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
if you've got a wealthy family saying, I need to do this, but I don't understand the financials, and should I trust this auditor, those sorts of things that one gets into where they need a neutral party.
Happily, it gave me a lot of 32 years of education to read financial statements because I'm now on 11 boards of our portfolio companies. So, yes.
Well, as I sometimes say that the best preparation ever made for running for Congress was running a private equity-backed company, because I learned to live with the fact that I was going to be surrounded by really smart 20-somethings telling me how to do my job. It's the nature of this line of work. So I ask all those questions because I don't know how somebody who has $10 million in personal wealth makes an informed judgment about how to invest in a privately held company without having someone of your talents. It's just too complicated, right? And yet now we're having this conversation saying, should we make it easier for people who can't afford to hire someone like you, right, to run through those investments? And so my question for Ms. Thornton is, as we talk about expanding access in private markets to people who can't afford to hire Ms. Howe, who are not worth $10 million, who don't pass anybody's existing definition of a sophisticated investor, number one, is it not our obligation as Congress to provide them with the protections that they would otherwise get from someone like Ms. Howe?
Absolutely. In fact, I would submit that probably they shouldn't be going into the private markets, but if one is going to expand exemptions, it's really critical that the information be provided. And the bigger the exemption, the more information should be provided. There's a reason why we have the public markets and why we have the disclosure. In the private markets, sorry, did I say private? I meant to say the reason why we have public markets is for disclosure. But what happens in the private markets is that there's no information, values are inflated, the original people, Ms. Howe's clients who originally came in and put money into that investment, whatever it is, they can actually cash out because we're also seeing an expansion of secondary markets in the private markets. They can cash out, and all those new retail investors who came in who really couldn't afford to lose their money and have bills to pay and can't afford a catastrophic loss, they're the ones who lose out. They don't get the benefit of the high valuation.
So just with the 25 seconds I've left, there's a whole number of bills that have been noticed and you've reviewed for this hearing. All would seem to make it easier for companies to access money from smaller investors. Are there any of those bills in your judgment that provide greater protection along the lines that Ms. Howe used to provide?
I skimmed through them. I didn't have a lot of time between when I saw them and this hearing to go into detail. I guess I would just say that, you know, basically, the committee should look very carefully at what they're going to accomplish actually for small businesses.
Thank you. I yield back.